my judges ready? And the timer? And the affirmative team. All right, then let's begin. 2004, Daniel Pfaff. Quote, Netanyahu said that, I believe that we can now say that Israel has reached childhood's end. It has matured enough to begin approaching a state of self-reliance. We're going to achieve economic independence, unquote. And stating this goal, Netanyahu had two major projects in mind: ending U.S. economic aid to Israel and reforming the Israeli economy into a free market of goods and ideas, unquote. This is the exact same quote the Affirmative team brought up in their first affirmative speech. Now, I'm going to be showing you how they're not actually doing what's best for Israel and proposing a counter plan or a better idea that is the best project for Israel. Now, before I go into the specifics of this argument, I'm going to be taking a look specifically at the Affirmative's goal that they stated in cross-examination and a negative value that we're going to present for today's debate right now. They said the first goal they brought up was a sense of maturity, and the second thing was the best thing for the United States. Now, we can agree with both of these, and hopefully I'll be proving to you in my speech that the negative team's counterplan are achieving both of those things much better. But specifically, I'd like to present a value of independence of Israel. Now, I think both the affirmative team and the negative team agree that this is the best thing for Israel, to be not dependent on the U.S. and as independent as possible. But the negative team's counterplan is going to do that better. So now let's specifically get into that. My first argument under the counterplan is talking about how Israel is basically better off without American aid. This is from Etan Abadi in 2011. Quote, a senior researcher at the Jerusalem Institute for Market Studies revealed on Wednesday that the state of Israel is actually losing money due to United States foreign aid and would be in a better economic position without it, unquote. My next argument here is specifically talking about how the value of the United States aid is not as high as it seems when it gets sent to Israel because of the buy U.S. requirement that the affirmative team is referred to. Is basically that Israel is required to spend roughly 75% of their aid in the United States. We'll be referring to this as the buy U.S. requirement. This is from Middle East Media Center editorial group, January 17th, 2011. Quote, the study notes that another problem is that the actual value of the U.S. aid is much less than $3 billion. The U.S. requires that 75% of the grant be spent in the United States. When someone receives a voucher worth $300 valid only in a specific store, it is obvious that the vouchers are worth less than $300. With part of the amount, the person will purchase goods he could have bought elsewhere for a lower cost, and with another part, he will buy goods he had not intended to buy in the first place. Similarly, the Buy U.S. requirement causes Israel to buy defense products at a high price, sometimes even products Israel may not need, unquote. So as we can see, this requirement on Israel causes two main harms in the status quo. First of all, that Israel is forced to buy products at a higher price, and second of all, because it's kind of like a gift card that you have to spend, they end up buying products that they don't necessarily need and would not have bought otherwise. My next argument here is that Israel loses up to $750 million a year due to U.S. aid. This is from the same source that I just quoted. Quote, Israeli industry loses up to $750 million because of U.S. aid. JIMS, the defense ministry, according to JIMS, the defense ministry purchases U.S. products even though Israel industry is capable of producing cheaper products, which better fit the Israeli military demands, with a loss to Israel industry of between $600 and $750 million a year, unquote. So as we can see, this aid, the idea that they have to spend this money in the United States, is actually harming Israel. Now, the affirmative team is making this problem worse, meaning not only do they have to spend 75% of the aid in the United States, they now have to spend 100% in the United States. So it's going to make all of these problems a lot worse. My next point, inherency point, is that the U.S. aid hurts Israel's competitiveness in the global market. This is from the Middle East Media Center editorial group, International Middle East Media Center, January 17, 2011, quote, the defense ministry often requires Israel companies to purchase expensive raw materials in the U.S. in order to use up available grants money. This raises the cost of the final product sold by Israeli industry and hurts its competitiveness in Israel and in the world. So as we can see, this piece of evidence is basically saying that because it requires a lot of the Israeli industry to buy expensive raw materials, it hikes up the price of the final product, and it hurts their competitiveness in the global market because they have higher prices. My last point is how this hurts this Israeli reputation. This is from the same source that I just quoted. Quote, since the Israeli army purchases so much in the U.S., some locally produced defense products are not used by Israel's own army. This hurts Israel industry's reputation on the international market and may cause a loss of sales, unquote. So as we can see with this piece of evidence, because Israel's industry's own government is not using their own products, it harms the reputation of their products. All right, now my last point here is how this is going to basically get worse, and the affirmative team is going to make that even more worse. This is from the same source I just quoted. Quote, JIMS forecasts that as a result of the economic crisis in the U.S. and its ever-increasing budget deficits, along with the rise of new powers such as India and China, which are interested in Israeli products, the economic and strategic damage of U.S. aid will increase in the coming years. JIMS recommends that the Israel government initiate an end to U.S. government grants, unquote. So as we can see in this particular piece of evidence, that basically what's happening is because of the Buy U.S. requirement, it's hurting Israel, and it's only going to get worse. Now, on top of that, the affirmative team is making that problem even more worse. So this is where we get into the negative team's counter plan. Our first mandate is that the military Buy U.S. requirement for Israel will be abolished. The military Buy U.S. requirement for Israel will be abolished. Israel will no longer be required to spend 3/4 of their military aid in the United States. Foreign military financing in the United States. Mandate 2, end foreign military financing with Israel. End foreign military financing with Israel. U.S. foreign military financing to Israel will end after fiscal year 2018 when the current contract expires, unquote. No funding is necessary, however, any incidental costs will be covered through normal congressional means, agency, United States federal government, enforcement, normal means, timeline. This plan will take immediate action upon a negative balance. All right, so as we can see here, basically what we're doing is, right now, the Buy U.S. requirement is hurting Israel. We're getting rid of that. So that allows Israel to build up their industry and their government and their military. So in 5 years, when the current contract expires, they'll be ready to get off American aid, and we're just going to let that expire. So that's basically the stance the negative team is valuing independence for Israel. And as the affirmative team's own evidence said, they want independence. This is what Israel wants, not the affirmative team's plan, which will cause a lot of economic damage to Israel's own economy. So for all these reasons, that we need to get Israel independent of United States aid and graduate them to a better status, that I urge a negative ballot. Thank you, and I now send open for cross-examination.
Everybody ready? All right, here we go. First off, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
All right, not too bad. Now, you stated evidence from the Jewish market, correct? That was one of your sources, right?
Jerusalem Institute for Market Studies.
Okay, now what exactly is that?
They're like an economic think tank, basically.
Okay. Alrighty. Now, you said several times on how Israel would lose just like all this money by continuing aid, right? You said like 700 million? Or
750 million a year.
750 million. Okay. How exactly does that happen?
Basically,
if it's aid?
Basically what happens is because of the Buy U.S. requirement, Israel is required to spend it in the United States. Now, because of that, they have to buy products that are more expensive and sometimes products that they don't necessarily need. So it ends up hurting their Israeli industry.
Alrighty. Now, you said several times on how the gift card, you used an analogy of a gift card on how a $300 gift card would be worth less. Right?
Yes.
So are you comparing Israel's economy to a store, like a grocery market?
The United States economy, actually.
The United States. So you
Similar,
want.
yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, can you start affirmative prep time and let me know every 30 seconds?
minute. One minute, 30 seconds.
All right, Steve's on the affirmative prep time.
All right, judges ready? And mom? Okay, the negative team?
Yes.
And my partner.
Mm-hmm.
I'll begin. All right, the second affirmative speech, basically what I'm going to be talking about is the idea that negative is brought up and the idea that we are brought up. But first of all, both of our cases seem to be hinging on this quote by Netanyahu in 2003, quoted saying, addressing the future of the U.S.-Israel economic relationship, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, said that I believe that we can now say that Israel has reached childhood's end, that it has matured enough to begin approaching a state of self-reliance, end quote, all right? Now, throughout the negatives last speech they brought up, they kept saying how Israel wanted to be independent. Israel wanted to live not by itself, but kind of isolate itself just a bit from the U.S., start to stand back a bit, if you will, right? And they refer to this quote over and over, saying the quote says independence, the quote says independence, the quote says independence. However, independence is not the quote. I believe they're confusing the words of independence with self-reliance. Now, I will explain to you the difference. Independence is kind of living by yourself, making your own money, building your own house, mowing your own lawn, that sort of thing. Self-reliance is being able to say, I can do that, all right? If I needed to, I would be able to do that, but I'm not going to shut myself out from society, and if you want to come help, be my bro. Let's go mow a lawn together, all right? That is the difference between independence and self-reliance, all right? And I'll bring up their, try my best to go down the flow of their arguments, that their next argument was something about their goals versus our goals. And they said our goal was maturity and saving money. I would like to further explain our goal. All right, we have specifically, our goal is to increase wisdom, to promote the idea of intelligent stewardship, the idea of both countries being mature in what they have and making intelligent decisions with their spending and their receiving. All right, their goal, as far as I got, is basically, as far as I received from their speech, is that Israel is allowed to assume this era of independence, which I just addressed that. All right, so that's their goal, is to kind of cut Israel off from our FMF program to give it a time of independence, if you will, even though they have not asked to be independent, to quote. They've asked to be self-reliant. They have not asked to be independent. They have not asked to be cut off from the U.S. and the FMF program. The next argument they brought up is saying, basically, Israel is being forced to buy unwanted and expensive items in the United States because they could be buying elsewhere, and the U.S. is just making them buy from the expensive U.S. Here's the problem with their argument. They're assuming that we're forcing Israel to take their own money and buy from the U.S. All right? The FMF program, the foreign military financing, works like this. We, as the government, give money to Israel. All right? Israel must spend that money back in the United States economy. Israel is not losing any of their own money. All right? Under the status quo, roughly 25%, rounding down, 25% of what we give to Israel is lost. Israel loses nothing under the status quo, and we do lose something. That's one of the harms we brought up, is that Israel has this exemption that's allowing them to lose no money, but causing us to lose money. Now, back when Israel began, 1948, when it was a young country, and it was just getting started, that was acceptable. Our economy was better back then. All right? Israel really needed our help. But as Israel and the United States have to and need to and already have realized that Israel has moved beyond the time of childhood. Both of us realize that it's time for Israel to assume an era of responsibility. The next argument they brought up was about, they bring up all this evidence from the Jewish market saying U.S. aid is causing all the problems. But nowhere in the evidence does it say FMF aid. In fact, in a couple pieces, I think in one of the pieces of evidence, it said economic aid, which is completely outside of the round. Economic aid is a completely different program that has to do specifically with boosting Israel's economy, nothing to do with the Israel military or the Israeli FMF program. All right? So the problem with their evidence is that they're dealing with something else. Now, much as I would like to fix this ESF program, the Economy Something Financing Program, which their evidence has to do with, much as I would really like to fix the problem of making Israel spend their own money on our items, that's outside the round. Okay? I once again bring up, Israel is losing no money. If you gain $10 from a person, but you have to spend that back on that person, you have not lost any of your own money. All right? Another argument they brought up is saying, I believe it was a piece of evidence that the Israeli government isn't purchasing Israeli-made weapons, and therefore that's bringing down the standard or the public view on Israeli weapons. All right? First of all, I ask why they bring up this evidence. What goes on in Israel, what the Israeli government decides to do with its own economy, once again, is outside of the round. All right? And they brought up another piece of evidence, I believe, their counter plan, as far as I perceive from it, is that they said the FMF aid from the United States sent to Israel, Israel can spend that wherever they feel like. So now, if we were to implement that mandate, not only would we be losing 25% of the FMF aid we give to Israel, we'd be losing all of it. Hooray! We're losing even more money. Problem number one, no one wants to do that. All right? Mandate one, if we were to implement their counter plan, mandate one, the United States would be losing even more money. And then their second mandate was after 2018, the FMF program ends. Problem is, that's already in legislation, so therefore it's already being done. They're not changing anything there at all. So this mandate is kind of, not to be harsh to them, but it's kind of a waste of time because it's already in writing. All right? And so basically bring up what the negative team has tried to paint our case as. They painted our case as this entire aid to Israel. Our aid has to do with the economic program and has to do with pretty much all the aid we give to Israel. Unfortunately, the affirmative team is not allowed to deal with all the aid we give to Israel. We can only deal with military aid, and in our case, we are dealing with the FMF program. None of their evidence addresses the FMF program at all that they brought up in their speech. Ours does. They have brought up this quote, and we have brought up this quote, about Israel asking for its self-reliance, or if they have made an incorrect synonym, independence. Once again, independence is standing by yourself, kind of watching, if you will, being by yourself, while self-reliance is saying, I can stand on my own 2 feet, but come join me if you want to. All right? And then the affirmative side. We believe in both countries being intelligent, both countries being responsible, both countries being wise with their spending, with our giving, and our receiving. And most of all, we completely believe, we completely affirm the relationship between the United States and Israel. So once again, what is the affirmative team saying? We must be wise. We must be smart. We are to be good friends with Israel. And the only way to do this, when considering the FMF program, is to reform it with the affirmative plan. Thank you.
Judges ready? Are you in the timer? Am I recording?
Yeah.
All right, then let's begin. How are you today?
Yeah.
I can understand. All right, I just have a couple questions for you. First of all, did Netanyahu say he wanted to wean Israel off of aid?
No, you did not.
Okay. Second of all, you talked about how Israel is not losing their own money, correct?
He didn't talk about that?
I'm sorry. I moved on to a different question. You talked about how Israel isn't losing their own money, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did we say that the Israel industry was losing money or the Israeli government?
In the evidence you brought up, you said the Israel economy was losing like $750 million a year,
Okay.
but that was outside of the FMF program.
Okay, all right. Really quickly addressing that, does the evidence, which specific evidence was talking about economic aid?
I mean, you read up like 6, so I couldn't tell you which piece of evidence that you brought up.
Okay, so you don't know. And how much economic aid do we give to Israel currently?
I do not know.
Okay, so you don't know. Okay. Now, you mentioned something really quickly about something's already in writing. Which argument was that under?
That was under your mandate too. You said after 2018 you're going to end the FMF program, but it's already supposed to end after 2018.
Okay. All right. Now, is $3.1 billion greater than $800 million?
Yes, it is.
Okay, awesome. And now, is the... Okay, I already just... Okay, thank you.